This is a presentation for the Irish Heritage Club of Seattle for Irish Week 2021. My name's Casey McNerthney, and I'm a great-grandson of Lily McAlerney, who was the last surviving participant of the Easter Rising in Dublin in 1916. She was Lily Kempson when she fought during Easter week. I was fortunate to spend a lot of time with Lily and heard many of her stories about 1916 firsthand, as did many people from our family, and she's the reason why our family is in Seattle. Lily first fled from Dublin to England using another person's name shortly after the Rising, and then came through Ellis Island in the summer of 1916. She came to Seattle because her brother and uncle had come here to work on ships. In the fall of that year, she met my great-grandfather, Matt McAlerney, and they were married in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood the following February and had 7 children together. Lily stayed in Seattle for the rest of her life, and she died in 1996, about a week after her 99th birthday. And I remember being there that day and what that moment was like for our family. And I also remember, too, thinking that day as we received calls from Ireland and across the nation with people asking for more information and wanted to know her story of Easter week, that I realized that day that we didn't have nearly as much recorded as we'd like to. We know from the story she told us that she lived with James Connolly's family in Belfast and worked with him very closely in Liberty Hall. And she also became friends with Rosie Hackett in the 1913 lockout. They were close friends and also worked at Jacob's Biscuit Factory in Dublin. Constance Markovich and Eamon de Valera came to visit Lily in Seattle. She told us also stories about each of the Easter week leaders who were executed and what it was like in Liberty Hall when the Rising was being planned. Some people in our family also recall her telling stories about seeing initial copies of the proclamation of the Irish Republic. The difficult thing is very few recordings of Lily talking about Easter week exist. There's only 4. Because I think it's best to hear her story in her own words, what I've done is I've taken all the audio that we have and put it together in a chronological order so you can hear it as she told it, as best we have recorded. There's so many more that I wish we had recorded, that we heard that I wish you could hear too, but this will go through first what it was like to grow up in the slums of Dublin, and then her job at Jacob's Biscuit Factory, and how she went to Mountjoy Jail in 1913 for her role in the lockout. She also covers how she became involved in the Irish Citizens Army through her work at Liberty Hall, and talks about how she escaped capture after the Easter Rising and how she fled to Seattle, where she met my great-grandfather. I've also included at the end here some brief audio where she recalls her friends who were Irish leaders, such as Patrick Pearse and Michael Collins and Constance Markovich and others. If you want to find additional information, the website Lily1916, Lily1916.com, has much more information, but without further ado, here is Lily's story in her own words.
People, really nothing to eat. So my father and my 3 brothers were in the British Army. They were in France while I was involved in Ireland.
How about your sisters? What'd they do?
They were very quiet. They didn't have anything to do with anything, labourers or British or anything like that.
Did they know that you were in the Citizens Army?
Oh yeah, but they didn't mind. There was no animosity there.
What about your brothers? Didn't they mind?
No, they were over in England. I mean in France. Okay. But my father, the economic conditions were bad.
Yeah.
There was no proper. The housing was awful. We only had 2 rooms, and my grandmother and my mother and me and my sisters lived in that house. And when my brothers come home on a furlough, they had to sleep on the floor. There was only 2 beds. Oh. And then, and also at that time, when they let the troops go home for R&R, like we call it here, that man was responsible for his own gun and his clothes. Mm-hmm. So when he come home to his family, wherever he was, that's what he had. But when he went back, he had no gun. Well, because we took it from him, see. Oh. So after that, England says, no, the men don't have to take on their own rifles. They're so responsible for it. Right. But they did make him pay for it. Yeah. Took it out of his paycheck.
So you stole your brother's guns?
Okay, she'd have to bring it in there. If anyone come in, we'll say it's his. Nobody come in and say it's ours. And we used it. And the name of the gun was Lee Enfield.
How do you spell it?
L-E-E-N-F-I-E-L-D. Lee Enfield. And our group was Citizens Army because you had to be a member of a union to get in. The volunteers, everybody come in. But when it started, we all became one, and we were called the Irish Republican Army. But I lot of socialists, but they have a lot of good qualities that we could take. The way socialism gets into the picture there is you want better housing conditions, you want good pay for work you do. I got involved because I was working in a Jacob's biscuit factory, and we had a strike. And
Why were you striking?
for money,
For money?
for increased wages, and the bus drivers went on strike, and so did we. So the employers of ours decided to lock them all out. So we had a lockout, and that lockout was taking place in 1930. We were all locked out. We were locked out of Jacobs. Everything shut down. And I went to ticket at the Jacobs factory.
Yeah.
And I tried to get the girl to come out with me. And the police said to leave them alone. Well, I wasn't touching them. I just started to come on our side. I got one girl to come with me, the other one didn't come. And the police said to go away and leave them alone. I said, I'm not touching them. And with that, he picked me up and put me in the car. And I got sent to jail.
For how long?
A month. But good behaviour, I got out after 2 weeks.
My God, how old were you, Lily, at that time?
14.
My God, you were in jail for a month.
Yeah. I just started Jacobs. You could go to work at 14.
Yeah.
And that's what.
And you were in jail for a month.
I was sent to a month, but I got out after 2 weeks.
So what was it like in there? What jail was it?
Oh, there was a bed to sleep on.
Yeah.
And what I had at home.
What were there many in the room with you?
Oh, it was a Dutchman's girl who would take us out here and make us walk around the ring. And then we didn't do that right. She'd make us sit down and pull the grass out of her hand. And then when we wasn't doing everything she finally put us back in our cells.
But where was the jail? Whereabouts was it in the
Mount
centre?
Juliet.
In Mount
Mount
Juliet? Oh, my God.
Everybody was out of work in Dublin. And coming into August of 1914, that all changed because England was at war, and a lot of the Irishmen were reserves, and they were called up to go to France, and that broke the strike. And then we decided we could do something too. When the strike was on, we had what we call a soup kitchen down the basement of the Union building. People come in with cans, and we give them food. And then the people in England, the Labour people in England, were on our side, and they sent over a shipload of clothes and food and helped us out that way.
When did you decide that you were gonna, throw a rebellion on Easter Monday? When did you decide that? Was it planned weeks before?
Oh, yes, yeah.
It was all planned?
After the strike was broke and England went to war on the 4th of August 1914, then we had to make other decisions too. That if we were going to do anything, that was when we had to do it, when England was low and we could get a good cracker. They all come into Liberty Hall for the meetings, all the prominent people that laid the plans down. Then when they left, they had to leave separate, so that no one could, well, they'd fine, but they wouldn't get anywhere. But some of the leaders had to stay in the hall because they went out, the real head ones, they'd be picked up and kept under house arrest.
So did they more or less live in the hall?
Oh yes, they stayed in the hall. Then when they were there in the hall, I went down every day and I cleaned up his apartment and prepared the food. James Connolly's.
Oh,
yeah.
What sort of man was he?
Very good man. I lived in his house. See, after we had the big strike, then we were kind of blackballed. Everyone was fighting us out. So I went down to Belfast and I lived in James Connolly's home, which is still there, and his wife, daughters and one son. He was a very good man. He didn't drink or smoke either.
He was very strict.
No, he was a Catholic, but he didn't go to Mass. But his wife until the night did. Then we put a big banner across in the front of Liberty Hall, and on that banner we said, we serve neither King nor Kaiser, but Ireland. And then all the troops that were being transferred from England to Ireland had to come up this way, and they saw that sign.
When the Germans sent their weapons and stuff, who went and picked up the weapons?
We had the longshoremen, and they had to come in on ships, so they would get to know what the cargo was going to be. They were ships.
Were they part of your labor union? Were they part of your labor union?
Oh yes, yeah, and they would find out what they were going to discharge. So they discharged them, and on the north wall was where the ships come in, and up along that street up there with the Liberty Hall. So they took all the cargo off and brought to Liberty Hall, and no one stopped them, and we used them.
Liberty Hall was your labor union?
Yeah. And they got the guns in there. Then later on they were all distributed. But the shipment wasn't meant for us. It was meant for the British.
Oh, and they just stole it?
They took it over, and there was nothing to do about it. All the longshoremen went down there and took it over and left the ship empty. We had these marches, and we're getting used to the cities where this group had to take care of that street and that group that way. So that's why you take out like 50 people. I mean, most of it was Saturday night and maybe Sunday, and we'd patrol where we're going, because that's where we're going to be assigned later on.
So you got familiar with the neighborhood?
Yeah, so you knew when the time had come that's one place you could go to. And we had branch officers of the union, and we'd go to certain branch office, and like we say to be 50 of us, well then we had about 40 policemen or 50 policemen.
British policemen or Irish policemen?
No, Dublin police.
Oh, Dublin police.
And then they would, we'd go in the hall, and we'd come out, and we'd divide. And the police divided too. They had to follow us, see where we were going. Till we got to one place, about 12 o'clock at night, and we went in there and had tea and cake, and were singing and dancing. Then we come home, and the police would follow anyone he could pick up to follow to find out where they lived. When I went down Easter morning, we all were assigned. You had to go to a group.
What time did you and your group go to Stephen's Green?
We left Liberty Hall at 12 o'clock, and it was a beautiful day. Now our group went to Stephen's Green.
What did you want to accomplish?
To catch the troops coming in from other parts. But see, it was a false move, because they had advantage, because they could get into the buildings.
Right.
While we were sitting right down here.
Were you going to shoot them all when the troops came in? Or?
No, you'd make them surrender if they wanted to surrender. But if they didn't, well, they were shot. They sent out troops on horseback, and they were shot. Easter Monday in Ireland is a holiday. Everybody gets out and has a nice time. So there's people walking around St. Stephen's Green, and we walked in there too. Then we locked all the gates except one. And anyone was in there, we had to put them, stay over there and stay out of the way. And so the people come in from all around the hotels there, visitors from other parts of the world, coming over for the horse races. And they were there, and so that's when we told them that they'd have to stay there for a few hours, because we couldn't let them out. But no harm was done to the man like that. And then I caught a kid about 15 years old, and he had a little pastry truck. He was delivering the pastry to the Shelburne Hotel, and that was the last gate open. And I told him, I said, where are you going? He said, going to the Shelburne Hotel. I said, what do you got there? Pastries. Well, I said, I'll tell you, I'll take them, and you go home. We said, can I take my cart? Oh no, I said, you leave that here with me, and I'll put them out the gate, and then I'll lock the gate. We had a gun, I had a revolver, but no, we didn't kill anyone. But when we circled the inside Stephen's Green and secured all the gates and let that kid out without his cart, then I was walking around then, and I got a man climbing over the fence, and I brought him down. I said, you got to get down, you join him, you got to stay here. When he saw the revolver, he got down. I said, no, you got to stay with us until we get out of here. Well, I got him down off the fence, and I took him over to the bandstand where the Michael Malone, the countess. So I said, you tell them what you want to know. And I don't know what happened to him.
If you were 20 years old right now, would you go back to Ireland and keep fighting?
Yes, I would.
You would?
I believe that way.
Do you have any hard feelings against British people now? I mean...
The British? No. No hard feelings. No. No, absolutely not. That this is the way people have a right to rule their own country. No hard feelings. Nothing whatever against them. In fact, they sent us food when we had no food. And clothes. No, nothing against the British people. It's the policy of the British government in taking, colonising another section all around the world. And that's too close over there. It's too small a country. They'd work better. The Irish people would work better with the English if they'd tell us, listen, you run your own country, and let them go. It'd be lots better. But it will come. And then about 4 o'clock in the morning, just coming dawn, we made a dash for the College of Surgeons. And we stayed in there till it was all over. We saw we couldn't hold the green because the hotels all around, we were sitting ducks right down here. We had to get out. And there was a big building across the street called the College of Surgeons. And our men broke in there and gave us the sign to follow them over there. And we got out of the green and into there, and we were there for 4 days till the surrender.
What was the first thing you did?
Well, we looked over the place to see what it was like and talked to the caretaker and told him that we had taken it over for a while and not to worry about it, but he'd have to stay in his own apartment.
Right.
So while we were there, we were running short of food, and we sent this man out, the caretaker, to go and get bread someplace for us. So he went out, and he said, well, can I take my son with me? The boy, about 15 or 16, I said, no, he stays here with his mother, and you go out and get some bread for us. And he brought back the bread. And then in the daytime, when we're in the College of Surgeons, we're about 1 or 2 blocks from Jacob's Biscuit Factory, and we had men in there too, and they'd sneak out when it'd be kind of quiet, and the people would be on the street, and they'd bring us over big boxes of cookies, and then the neighbours in that district to say, here's a loaf of bread, and here's a pound of butter, but don't say you got it here. And we'd bring them into our place, and we'd bread and butter. Then I was appointed one day to take care of the food, which all was sandwiches and tea. And my name was set up there, Lily Kempson in charge of the kitchen. The next day, another woman was in charge of the kitchen. And you had to work in forage for whatever you're going to give them. Mostly bread and butter and tea. And once in a while we'd get luncheon meats and kept going like that. And then pretty soon they decided down at the post office that we had to surrender. And then the word come in, and that's when they told me to take these addresses and leave. And I wasn't taken. I was on the outside. I got out ahead. But
how'd you get out ahead?
On the side door.
Oh,
I had these messages that I had to deliver.
And the police
Then the regular
come in
group come in, and the British soldiers outside said, we want you to surrender. So they all come down and stood on the line there and gave their gun to the British. Then they took them off. And I was sent out with messages to certain people. And they wrote the messages on the side of my leg.
Oh, yeah?
Where there wouldn't be a paper or anything like that. And I went and delivered all the messages. Everybody was looking for me. Police were up there looking for me. And I stayed in the church all night, right nearby there. Went in when devotion was on. Then I went in the confession box. And I stayed there till morning when they opened up the church again and come out. Then I took a chance. I went over to my mother, and she took care of me then, and got enough money and sent me to England. They stopped me. I was going from the north of the River Liffey over to the south, and the soldiers were all there blocking off the streets and saying, well, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. He said, where do you live? I said, I live in Golden Lane. He said, well, there was an English soldier, but there was an Irish soldier with him in the British Army, and I just happened to know him. He's a fella called Red Carl. And he called me, he said, do you know her? He says, oh yes, I know, she lives in Golden Lane. So I got up home and got into the house. But then the neighbours got around knowing I was there, and they would call the police.
Oh, yeah? Did you live in Golden Lane? Did you really go home?
Yes, for just one night till my mother got me the ticket to go down to the ship. Then you got to get out of the country, and nobody knew where I was. They were always going up to my mother, where is she? My mother wouldn't tell them. Well, all the guys kept going up. And then my grandmother saw them coming up, the British soldiers coming in and looking for me. And my grandmother was a very old lady, and on the bed, she was most of the time in the bed. There was no place else to sit. And they come over, and she'd start telling them to get out of here. She'd,
who would come over? The police? The British police would come over to her house?
Yeah. Oh, sure. The British, the Dublin police, but they were working for the British.
Yeah.
And they were just saying out, they were just looking for her. Where did she go? She's not dead, she's not marked dead, and she's not in prison. Where is she? And my grandmother started yelling at me, said, here I got my 3 grandsons over fighting in France, and my son-in-law, and you're coming in to annoy me, and I'm going to get out of this bed right now and see what I can do about it. She said, no, Mrs. Now, you lay there, you're all right. And they kept pushing her back down on the bed, and she was struggling to get them out. And finally said, all right, we have them for her, so we're leaving. So then they left, the guys come in and got the guns from between the box mattress and the mattress my granny was laying on.
Oh yeah? Is that what she kept?
She knew what was there. That's why she was telling them, I'm going to get out of here. And the most she said that, the more, now lay down there, you're all right. And so got all the guns out and we just take them away. There's always someone to come and pick them up, you know.
Yeah.
And the city was disturbed, so nobody was bothering whether you had a long coat or a short coat and take the guns.
So when you went home, the people next door, someone called?
Yeah, they said, they told the police, she's here, we know, we saw her. But when they come, I wasn't there. And I had to get a false name. And I was called Ida Daly. And we were all on a ship. And before the ship pulled out, he called off all the names. And he getting Ida Daly. I have nothing, I'm Ida Daly. So I answered. Then you got off over in England and went where you were. And from there on, I come to the United States.
Were you scared?
No. You don't be scared at that age, honey.
Yeah.
Nothing frightens you.
How old were you?
We're almost 18 then.
How did you and Matthew happen to meet?
At a nice club here.
Oh, where was that? Do you recall where that was?
Yeah, we used to have these at the 19 yesterday. There's an old triangle game down there.
Ah.
What month you met him?
Like in the winter time, the opposite.
September, October, and then you married the following February.
Yes.
Tell us where you were married and something about that, and who was your who stood up with you.
St. Joseph's Church on Capitol Hill.
Oh, yes.
And the priest had married his father O'Malley. And that was an old wooden church. Forget what the name was, but it was a group of Irish people got together and talked about how we can help the people in Ireland. And then we'd have parties and things and picnics and things and got acquainted. All the Irish would get together. We collected the money for guns and shipped them to Ireland.
So you were doing...
Oh yeah, we were helping out, yeah.
Tell me about Sean O'Casey. How did you meet him?
I met him in the insurance office in Liberty Hall, Dublin. He was a clerk there and I was there too.
How old were you when you met him?
16.
How old is he about? He was...
Only his 40s.
Did he know you? Or did you just
Yes.
like acquaintances?
No, we just knew everybody in the office.
Oh yeah? Was he a nice guy?
Yes, he was a nice man.
Well, tell me about one
But
time
he was always sniffling. And I often wondered why he was sniffling. And he'd go down and have his lunch, and I stayed up and had my lunch there. And one day I decided to find out, where does he go and come back sniffling like that? Didn't know anything about drinking. And there's a saloon on the bottom floor, and he went down there, and that's where he had his lunch. And then he come up and be sniffling all over the place. And that's where I found out he was down there drinking. But he wasn't a heavy drinker.
Just a nice beer
Yeah,
or
he
something
wasn't
like
a heavy
that?
drinker. But he worked along with us, but then he wanted to change it more like the Russians were doing, see. The Russians threw out all their Russian flags and stars and all like that. We already had a flag, but he wanted us to have another flag and call the plough and stars to symbolise with Russia, with the...
Sickle and hammer?
Yeah. So when he couldn't get his way, he left. And later he moved to England, and he got married there, and had 3 sons, and continued writing the books. And they're all very popular.
Was he a big writer when he was at the
Yes,
insurance?
he was, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a great imagination. He knew how to put it in so that people would understand. And it wouldn't be heavy, it'd be something you'd like to laugh at. Sean Casey did help with making, not the guns, but what we put in them.
Bullets and stuff?
Yeah, put
Gunpowder?
Yeah. He wanted to go the Russian way, and we thought that was too brutal. Not me, but the leaders. It was wasn't the right way to go around it. He said the only way he can ever get it is go like the Marx and Lenin in Russia, and make a new flag and Now, they disagreed. The leaders disagreed with him in Ireland. He was a leader to a certain extent. So when he found that out, then he had nowhere to do, so he moved to England.
Oh, yeah?
And he wrote all those plays.
Well, the Countess, well, she was there.
Margaret?
Yes, that's correct. She was not the society. She was up in high society and all that kind of stuff. But you met this Count Margaret that made her a countess. But it didn't change her any. She just worked along. She had a great desire to help the poor. And when the strike was going, before the war started, we established a soup kitchen for to feed the people. And she worked in there. We'd get donations, potatoes and vegetables from the market, and then some meat man would use a few pounds of steak or meat or whatever, and stir it up and feed the people.
How tall was the Countess? Was she a tall woman?
A tall, very stately, wonderful woman. Yeah.
Nice
She
looking.
gave everything to the cause. All her money and everything.
Was it rumoured that she really liked Padraig Pearse? Did you ever hear that?
Yeah. She's a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
Everything she was with us in the College of Surgeons, and she was taken out there that day. She had her own gun, a gun that could fire from your hip.
When she came out here to Seattle, did she stay a long time here?
I met the train and come down. She stayed at what they call the New Washington Hotel, which is now the Josephine. She stayed there, and we had a very nice thing. We had a parade of cars. When they come in at the King Street Station on the train, then we had automobile cars all coming up 2nd Avenue up to the New Washington Hotel, and that's where they stayed. It was very lovely.
Did you meet Padraig Pearse and his brother?
Yeah, we seen them at the St. Edmunds.
Yeah.
That farm where his brother and him were schooled there.
Right.
And his mother lived there.
Did you know Mr. De Valera?
Yes, I did.
What kind of man was he?
A very nice man, and probably everyone knows about him. He was born in New York. His father was Spanish and his mother was Irish. When he was a little fella, they sent him home to Ireland to live with his grandparents, and he learned all the Irish languages and went to school there. But he was an American citizen. That's why they didn't execute him. And he had a school in Dublin called Blackrock College. That's where he taught. Yeah, he was a very... I used to see him in Liberty Hall. They put the Liberty Hall for meetings, things had to be taken care of.
When did De Valera come here? Well, you were married by that time, right?
Oh, yes, we were in our own home.
Right, here in Seattle.
Hotel.
Right. Tell me about what did he like to do when he was here? Your husband showed him around?
And Matt showed him around. Very easy, very pleasant man.
Did you know Michael Collins?
Not very well, but I did know of him, yeah.
What was your impression of him?
Oh, God, he was a good man. He was, the story about him was, he was working in the post office in London, and everything started, and he was inclined to side with the people in Ireland, but he was working for the government. And they got a lot of information that way, and they could go back and forth because they assumed he was working for the government, he never get into any trouble. So he come back and forth to Ireland, and that's what they did. They got to know him then. But he worked for the post office in London for years, and they never knew anything about it. That's why a lot of their information that they had in London, it come out through Michael Collins, who's still working there. Yeah, I didn't know him very well, but he was shot in ambush one night.
And that's the majority of the audio we have saved of Lily's recollections. I'd like to give a special thank you to 4 people who had the excellent foresight to record Lily's stories while we still could. Grandchildren Colleen McAlerney in 1983, Tim Larson in 1986, Matt McCullough in 1992, and her great-grandson Kenji McCullough in 1994. A very special thank you also goes to John Keane from Seattle's Irish Heritage Club, both for this opportunity and for all of his amazing work to make Irish Week in Seattle such an enjoyable time that we look forward to each year. Thanks to each of you who listened to this for taking time to hear Lily's story. The website, lily1916.com, LILY1916.com, has much more information and photos. And if you enjoyed this, please pass it along to somebody else who you think would enjoy it as well. Thanks for listening.